Ask most South Africans who they trust to deliver results, and Rassie Erasmus's name comes up more often than most politicians. That's not speculation based on polls. That's reality based on what he's accomplished. A rugby coach with presidential appeal, not because he makes good speeches or shakes the right hands, but because he delivers results that matter to ordinary people. 2 World Cup trophies, a winning record that sits consistently in the mid-70s percentage-wise, a team that went from broken to unstoppable in less than 2 years. Meanwhile, somewhere in government buildings across South Africa, politicians are still trying to figure out how to keep the lights on. The contrast couldn't be starker if someone scripted it. On one side, you have a man who took a team that lost 57-0 and turned them into back-to-back world champions. On the other side, you have leaders who inherited a functioning country and somehow managed to create an electricity crisis that cost the economy billions annually. One group builds things, the other group watches things crumble. One creates jobs through success, the other presides over unemployment rates that breach 30%. This isn't about politics. This is about patterns, about what happens when someone with a plan meets a problem versus what happens when bureaucracy meets a crisis. Rassie Erasmus didn't get handed a perfect situation when he walked into Springbok Rugby. The team was fractured, confidence was shattered, but could have pointed to the mess left behind by his predecessor, could have asked for more time, more resources, more patience. They're asking a serious question about what leadership actually looks like when it's measured by outcomes rather than intentions. Let's talk numbers, because numbers don't have political affiliations. Rassie Erasmus has coached dozens of test matches across his career with the Springboks. His win rate hovers consistently in the mid-70s percentage-wise, with some seasons pushing even higher into the 80s. That's not just good. In international rugby, where every opponent is elite and every match is scrutinized by millions, maintaining that level of success is extraordinary, but statistics only tell part of the story. The real transformation happened in how he rebuilt a broken system. When Rassie took over the Springboks, the previous coach had left with one of the worst records in modern South African rugby history. Win rates had collapsed to around 44%. Public confidence was gone. Players were questioning whether they belonged at international level. The infrastructure for developing future talent was inconsistent at best. Rassie didn't just focus on winning the next game. He created the elite player development pathway, a system designed to give talented players from all backgrounds equal opportunities to succeed. Not for political correctness, not to check boxes, because he understood that South Africa's greatest strength is its diversity. And leaving talent untapped because of old systems was strategic stupidity. That pathway has produced world-class players who have become central to the team's success. Players who might never have gotten opportunities under the old system now wear the green and gold with pride, and they perform. The transformation wasn't just about representation, it was about culture. Rassie recognized that you cannot build a successful team if people don't feel valued. If certain players believe their coach doesn't trust them, they won't perform at their peak. If the environment doesn't respect every culture in the room, unity becomes impossible. So he addressed it directly. From day one, no dancing around uncomfortable topics. No pretending problems don't exist. Just honest conversations about what needed to change and why. The result? A team where players from completely different backgrounds genuinely fight for each other. Where unity isn't a marketing slogan, but a lived reality. Where the success belongs to everyone. Meanwhile, various government departments struggle with basic service delivery despite having exponentially more resources than a rugby team. The contrast raises uncomfortable questions about leadership capability across different sectors. What makes Rassie's leadership particularly interesting is how he balances short-term performance with long-term development. He doesn't sacrifice the future for today's results, but he also doesn't use building for the future as an excuse for present failure. His teams compete at the highest level while simultaneously developing the next generation. That's the definition of sustainable success. His coaching philosophy centers on creating ownership rather than just following orders. He doesn't want players who simply execute instructions. He wants players who understand the strategy, who can think independently, who take personal responsibility for outcomes. That requires trust. It requires honest communication. It requires accepting that people might disagree with you and being secure enough to hear those disagreements. In one documented instance, he opened strategy discussions to both coaches and players, explicitly stating his suggestions were not commands but starting points for collaborative problem solving. That approach builds buy-in. When people have input into decisions, they become invested in making those decisions work. They don't just comply, they commit. That level of deep democracy in decision-making is rare in high-pressure environments where leaders often default to authoritarian approaches. Rassie also demonstrated another critical leadership quality: adaptability. When his methods face criticism, he evaluates whether the criticism has merit. When situations change, he adjusts his approach. He's not rigidly attached to a single way of doing things. If something works better, he adopts it. If something isn't working, he changes it. That intellectual flexibility combined with core principle consistency is a rare combination. South Africa's challenges are obviously more complex than coaching a rugby team. Governance involves navigating constitutional constraints, budget limitations, competing interest groups, and the messy reality of democratic politics. Nobody is suggesting that running a country is as simple as running a rugby team. But the fundamental principles of effective leadership transcend context. Clarity of vision, strategic planning, empowering capable people, measuring outcomes honestly, adapting based on results. These principles work whether you're coaching athletes or managing a country's infrastructure. The question isn't whether Rassie could literally become president tomorrow and solve every problem. The question is why the leadership qualities that produce success in rugby seem so absent. That's why the Rassie for president idea resonates despite being somewhat absurd on its face. People aren't literally demanding their rugby coach become head of state. They're expressing frustration with leadership that doesn't deliver. They're pointing to a living example of what competent leadership looks like and asking why they can't have that in other areas of life. The real lesson isn't about Rassie specifically. It's about what his success reveals about leadership principles that work. First, results matter more than intentions. Good leaders are judged by outcomes, not by effort or rhetoric. Second, building systems is more important than fixing individual problems. Rassie didn't just win games, he created pathways and structures that produce sustained excellence. Third, empowering people beats micromanaging them. When individuals take ownership, they perform better than when they're just following instructions. Fourth, diversity makes teams stronger when properly integrated. Different perspectives and backgrounds create more complete solutions to complex problems. Fifth, accountability drives performance. When everyone knows that results will be measured and evaluated honestly, standards rise. Sixth, adaptability combined with core consistency creates sustainable success. Being willing to change methods while maintaining principles allows organizations to navigate changing circumstances without losing identity. These lessons apply far beyond rugby. They apply to businesses, educational institutions, healthcare systems, and yes, government. The difference is that some environments make it easier to implement these principles than others. Sports has natural accountability built in. Government often doesn't. But difficulty isn't impossibility. South Africa has demonstrated in specific contexts that excellence is achievable even with limited resources. The Western Cape Province, for instance, has maintained significantly better service delivery and lower unemployment than national averages despite facing the same external challenges. That proves the problem isn't purely about resources or circumstances. Leadership and governance quality matter enormously. When people suggest Rassie for president, they're really asking for leaders who think and act more like he does. Leaders who focus on solving problems rather than managing perceptions. Leaders who build systems for sustained success rather than looking for quick fixes that create future problems. Leaders who value all citizens and leaders who measure themselves by outcomes and take responsibility when outcomes fall short. That's not too much to ask. That's the minimum standard citizens should demand from people who want to lead them. The fact that these qualities seem remarkable rather than routine reveals how far standards have fallen in political leadership. The consistent win rate isn't the point. The point is what that win rate represents: consistent execution, strategic thinking, development of talent, unity of purpose, accountability for results. These are the building blocks of organizational success in any field. The fact that South Africa produces this level of excellence in sports while struggling with basic service delivery and government isn't a mystery, it's a choice. A choice about what standards we accept from our leaders. A choice about whether we demand accountability or accept excuses. A choice about whether we're serious about solving problems, or just serious about talking about solving problems. So no, Rassie Erasmus probably won't actually run for president, but the conversation about why he would win if he did is worth having. because that conversation forces us to articulate what effective leadership looks like and why we're not getting it.